Today's show is brought to you by the Skunk2 magnesium valve cover.
If a junk 2 car whoops your ass and that car is junk, what is your car? So, if you're going faster on BMF stuff and everybody else has access to the same stuff, you're flowing more, your tuning's better. You know, all that other stuff that adds up.
And one thing that I want to add that I remember one of the best questions that you've asked that sort of sparked that interest in my mind, and we won't get into detail of it, was, again, understanding some of the limitations, the physical limitations that we are now at as far as bore size, as far as port size. You know, how do we get more airflow into the engine?
Yeah.
And that question in itself has sparked more thoughts and more creative thinking in my mind than
Great.
anything else in probably the last 6 months. And we won't get into detail on how you get more air in without.
The funny thing is like people forgot the main basic things. Like, how do you get more air in? How do you get more air out? Bore is fixed. Stroke is fixed. So obviously you can't find it there, right? You can find it in the seal. That'll give you more suction,
RPM.
more sealing on the power, right? And then you got head and cams, right? And then from there you got manifolds and throttle bodies, and you work your way out from there. But the heart is the heart. And the heart is the head, and it is the cams. That's the center of all your volumetric efficiency. Ignition efficiency will get you some more, but that's a different battle. And I'll leave that up for you.
We take it back to, I don't know, this is 2018. And we have this whole big push on, there's this whole, going to the moon. That's where the whole moon talk came about.
No way. That's great. We landed on the moon!
I don't know what's the moon talk.
You mixed that with air. Well, there was like this whole big push where, I had these countdown lists and like all these uncharted areas as far as ET and time, where I'm like, okay, no one has gone 9.3, I want to go 9.3. No one has gone 9.2, and this was before the talks of even going 8s. So, I would go out to forget the events. These guys were going to these events, these OGS events, and I really wasn't interested in that. I was sort of interested in, crossing off my own list, right? So, me not thinking anything of it, not realizing how big of a fan base we actually started to build, I would just go to test and tunes. So I would roll out to these test and tunes. At this point, I'm on a BMS 3. So, that was the latest and greatest that gave me for a cam. And I'd basically just go out there and test. No rules, no weight rules, no anything. It's just see how fast I can actually go. And I remember the first time going like 9:39.
Yeah! Hell yeah!
And it was like a bullshit Tuesday at ACO.
As was on fuel?
This was on 30% nitro at the time. So
5+.
M5+, which is what the standard was, what all these guys were running as their M5 in these OGS events. And boom, the car goes 939. And they had this bullshit lit.
Or were they 9.8s?
Everyone else was going 9.8, 9.7s. So the car goes out there, goes 9.3s. And now the shift was away from the all-motor class to now we need to go and try to one-up this kid, because now the internet's going f***ing crazy. The internet doesn't know any better. They just see this kid going that fast, and it's like, how is this kid doing this with an adjustable wrench and an open trailer, and we're rolling up in these big rigs and going 9.5, 9.6.
What you need for your car?
Oh, my damn motor.
Hey!
A lot of people were talking calling it junk 2, calling it, but in reality, if you look at the industry as a whole, everybody's running the that they were telling me that the skunk to junk is really the opposite. It's like maybe they're to junk and they're just afraid to say that they're running skunk.
Ding ding.
So I eventually, through some mutual conversation, I get the invite here to Skunk for the first time. This is 2019 through Jeff G. And
I have no clue who Jamie is at this point.
That's Jamie.
yeah, Dave has no clue.
I have no clue. I'm
no clue who Dave is. I just know
Dave.
Jeff. And Jeff's like, hey, we see that, we know that you're running a BMS at this time, the 3. And we see the car went really fast. Come on here, let's, show you the facility and get to know you a little better. So we go out there. I come on.
Came with some Aki.
Aki was there. So Aki came with me.
Right.
And at the time, Aki had an all-motor car going, equally as fast. Same thing on BMF. And it sort of started like the real big push and spark again in all-motor, where now the industry they didn't know the difference between M1, because again, there was really no M1 class. At the time, it was M5, but they didn't know the difference between M5 and like 30% nitro. And, facility was cool. I walked through, I saw the engine room. I saw the other side of Skunk. And at the time, I didn't really know much of Skunk. I knew of the product. I knew of the cam, being a tuner. And I knew that, there were sport front cars that were still running something like a Pro 1. And still do to this day. And it really opened my eyes to say, a lot of people were talking, calling it junk 2, but in reality, if you look at the industry as a whole, everybody's running this between the ultra manifold, between, the Pro 1, the Pro 2, the Pro 3, and the all-motor stuff for B series. And then now with this BMF, it's like, maybe, the that they were telling me that the Skunk junk is really the opposite. It's like maybe they're junk and they're just afraid to say that they're running Skunk.
Ding ding.
Now, what I win? Anything in this general area, right in here. Anything below the stereo, and on this side of the bicentennial glasses. Anything in this 3 inches, right in here in this area, that includes the chiclets but not the erasers.
So that, the Skunk visit was cool. I in turn got a lot of support from Jeff and Skunk at the time. I still didn't meet Dave. I didn't know who the hell Dave was.
That's Dave.
And, we went back and started pushing the envelope even more. Now it's like, now we're going 9.2. Now we went out and started really perfecting the short track and really perfecting the chassis. And we go out to World Cup one year, and we're supposed to be racing in the all-motor class, but we go out there testing, the car goes 9.16. And there's like a huge uproar. Jason Miller, the promoter of World Cup, had to go online and like put up a post saying, hey, Marsh was just testing it, experimenting in his little lab setting, and he's not going to be racing at that time. But it also motivated others, some of the other guys their focus wasn't in racing all motor. Their focus was on going out and one-upping that time. And, at the time, there was no competition. I think the fastest they went at that event was like a 9:25 or 9:29, and we went a 9:16. And this was on like bullshit fuel. So we go, not only did we go fast on nitro, but we drained the nitro out the car. The car is in nitro form, nitro gearing. We pour M1 in the car, and the car still is like the second fastest import in the field in like nitro trim on a BMF3. So we were the only real ones in the class at the time on a BMF3. So we fast forward, a year, and we take Sonic's car, BMF2, and 30% nitro. We go out there running 899.
Oh my God.
And then forget about it. It's game over from there. And now it's like the focus.
Half a second ahead at that point.
Half a second ahead. And now the focus, and I sort of take some responsibility in killing all motor, because now the focus was on, and again, even from the big companies, on chasing that number and not on developing stuff to get all motor back where it needs to be. And I appreciate that, where it's not, here's the answer. It's here's where you should be thinking for the answer.
I don't want this to just be like a session, right? It's sort of like, how are we going to motivate other people to raise their game?